Hello. Thank you for watching our session as part of the Spring 2025 CNI Project Briefing Series. Today we'll be providing an introduction to a new shared repository service in Canada called Scholaris. As well, we'll be sharing reflections on developing the community building blocks for the service. My name is Julia Gilmore, and I'm the Digital Projects Librarian at Scholars Portal and a co-lead for Scholaris. Scholars Portal is a department at the University of Toronto Libraries and the technical service provider for the Ontario University Libraries Consortia, which is called OCL. I first wish to acknowledge the land on which I'm grateful to live and work on, and where Scholars Portal and the University of Toronto are located, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This land is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit.
I'm Gabriela Mircha. I'm a digital projects librarian at the University of Calgary and CAR visiting program officer for metadata strategies and Scholaris. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, districts 5 and 6.
Gabriella and I are really thrilled to tell you a little bit more about Scholaris and the work of a couple of the community projects today. So first, we'll start with a brief introduction to the service. Scholaris is a new national opt-in shared repository service that aims to support open discovery, management, sharing, and preservation of Canadian scholarship. The seeds for Scholaris were planted many years ago as regional and national consortia in Canada explored the feasibility of shared institutional repository infrastructure with their members. These assessments confirmed there was strong interest and opportunities for a shared model that could provide economies of scale, centralized technical support, and collective resource development to address pain points in repository management and ensure Canadian IRs remain viable and attractive options for depositing and discovering Canadian scholarship. In November of 2023, a formal expression of interest was signed between the Canadian Association of Research Libraries, CARL, OCL, and the University of Toronto Libraries to execute the recommendations from these reports and share responsibilities for the service development in collaboration with regional consortia and members of the repository community. Scholars Portal is the technical service provider for Scholaris. We're building the infrastructure, hosting the platform, and managing the service using the DSpace open source repository software. As well, we're running an early adopter program to inform the development of the service. Complementing these efforts, Carl is leading the development of the governance and financial model through an advisory committee, and they're also coordinating network of expert groups who are offering guidance on key aspects of repository management. So as expected, the technical infrastructure is a fundamental component of the service. The Scholaris service consists of hosting and managing parallel DSpace instances using a software-as-a-service model. Each participating school receives their own institutionally branded DSpace instance hosted on a dedicated virtual machine on our Scholars Portal servers. Scholaris accommodates DSpace-supported customizations and integrations within its service model, allowing repository teams flexibility to choose features that meet their specific needs and repository use cases. We use an open-source version of Chef to automate upgrades and streamline workflows. Local customizations are applied to a centralized code base and deployed to the instances using a configuration management system. This centralized service model is similar to how we deliver other digital publishing services here at Scholars Portal. And as the technical service provider, a primary area of focus as we're building the infrastructure is thinking about it being scalable, efficient, affordable, and flexible. So it's designed to meet and respond to diverse repository scenarios and needs of Canadian institutions. Scholaris is not just about delivering the technical components, though. Developing community infrastructure is critical to building a forward-thinking, collaborative, and responsive service. Engaging with the community helps us better understand, as a service provider, what Canadian repository teams want from a shared service. In many ways, the community infrastructure informs the technical infrastructure and how we deliver the service, including the support and resources we offer. While institutional repositories in DSpace are relatively new territory for Scholars Portal, many schools and organizations in Canada have been running their repositories for decades. Repository teams are and continue to be experts in their own repositories and their institutional context, but also within the broader repository landscape. So as we build out Scholaris, we're looking for ways to acknowledge and complement the vital work that's already been happening and continues to happen locally, to collaborate with Canada's vibrant repository network and international and DSpace repository communities, and ideally introduce some new approaches and avenues for knowledge sharing, support, and collaborative feature development. As mentioned before, two key ways that we're doing this are through the Early Adopter Program and the Network of Experts. I'll give a short introduction to the Early Adopter Program, and then Gabriella will walk us through a little bit about the Network of Expert Groups. So the Early Adopter Program is one way that we're bringing the technical and community pieces together for Scholaris. The program launched last April, and it's a 2-year cohort-based program open to Canadian academic institutions of all sizes that represent a wide range of repository use cases and migration scenarios. We're at the halfway mark of the program now and currently have just over 20 institutions participating in the program in phased migrations. About half of these schools are now live on their Scholaris instances, with more expected to go live in the coming months and toward the end of the year. The goals of the Early Adopter Program are to migrate participating institutions to DSpace, and through that process, better understand what's needed to support Canadian IRs from a service perspective. Expected outputs of the program include establishing efficient workflows for migration and ongoing service delivery, clarifying what the Scholaris offering includes, identifying required resources and responsibilities, and determining the pricing structure needed to operate the service on a cost recovery basis. By the end of the program, we anticipate Scholaris will be fully operational and ready to support broader adoption across Canada. There are a number of ways that we're engaging with the community through the Early Adopter Program. We host monthly community calls for participating schools, which are designed as a place to stimulate dialogue between and among schools and with Scholars Portal, as well as offering an avenue for schools to share feedback and help inform the development of the service by letting us know what types of features they'd like to see in the service. To accommodate the request from participants for more discussion around specific repository topics, we've also started hosting special interest sessions outside of the calls. We're really thrilled that in these calls, participants frequently share practical insights and local resources for managing their own repositories. It's this generosity and support that's extended to fellow participants that is a shining example of the opportunities that exist for sharing resources and knowledge within a collaborative, community-driven service model. Developing documentation for the community as well as developing community-led documentation is a significant priority for the Scholaris team. We primarily share this documentation on our wiki and in our service FAQ documents. We've also set up communication channels to continue these conversations, provide service updates, and offer support, as well as hosting quarterly information sessions with the broader community. I'll turn it over to Gabriella now to discuss the expert groups.
Thank you, Julia. Since March 2024, 3 expert groups have been formed to provide recommendations in critical areas of Scholaris. These groups are vital in identifying common use cases, developing practical strategies, prioritizing requirements, and much more. The opportunity for the Scholaris team to collaborate with the expert groups has brought critical perspective and expertise to this initiative, strengthening both its direction and impact. Each group has a distinct focus area, contributing specialized knowledge and perspectives. The Scholaris Metadata and Discovery Expert Group focuses on developing metadata strategies to enhance the discoverability of repository content. Scholaris Electronic Theses and Dissertations Expert Group works on the migration and integration of electronic theses and dissertations into the shared infrastructure. And the Scholaris Digital Preservation Expert Group concentrates on establishing digital preservation protocols that ensure long-term access to digital assets. The first 2 groups began in March 2024, while the Digital Preservation Group started a few months later in August of the same year. Expert Groups is a very fitting name, as it brings together a remarkable range of repository knowledge and hands-on migration experience across different platforms. The expert groups are composed of approximately 8 to 10 members. Membership includes representation from the institutions that are currently part of or planning to join Scholaris, ensuring diverse perspectives and relevance to the broader service landscape. The groups convene monthly for focused 1-hour meetings and maintain ongoing communication. Their collaborative approach is flexible and responsive, often forming subgroups to address targeted deliverables. Shared workspaces, typically in Google project folders, support transparent and organized communication. Draft recommendations are first reviewed by the advisory committee and then circulated to the early adopters and the broader community to gather comprehensive feedback. Meet the expert group members driving this work forward with their insight and experience. These experts have volunteered countless hours to engage in thoughtful discussion, collaborate on complex challenges, and develop comprehensive recommendations. Their dedication underscores their commitment to improving the service, the Canadian repository ecosystem, and driving meaningful progress. These short-term outputs and active work items mark an important first step in building a community-informed foundation. The expert groups are doing remarkable work to move this forward. Starting with the metadata and discovery expert group, this group began by identifying common use cases and priorities. They quickly organized into 4 subgroups focused on minimum viable metadata, cleaning metadata for migration, configurable entities, and multilingual repositories. In addition to those core areas, they also developed an information document for persistent identifiers. These outputs draw directly on the members' deep experience and are grounded in real-work challenges they've seen. All 5 deliverables are complete, and the recommendations will be released very soon. Turning to the electronic thesis and dissertations expert group, this group has been working on the complexities around electronic thesis and dissertations, including conducting a needs assessment survey, identifying requirements for Library and Archives Canada thesis harvesting, non-traditional theses, reviewing standards adherence, summarizing workflows in DSpace, and identifying best practices and relevant resources. The needs assessment survey is complete, and the results are informing the other short-term deliverables. The document providing guidance on Library and Archives Canada requirements for harvesting theses and dissertations is also complete and will be released soon. And finally, the Digital Preservation Expert Group. Their work so far includes a needs assessment survey focused on preservation, which is now complete and provides a foundation for the other deliverables, an environmental scan of policies, a risk assessment matrix, testing DSpace preservation features and workflows, and drafting recommendations for a preservation service offering. What all this reflects is the impressive progress made. The dedication is clear not only on what they produced, but in the way they work together. The group chairs have provided steady leadership, and the members continue to bring forward their expertise and energy. Looking back on the first year of building the Scholaris community infrastructure, several key strengths have emerged. Members have shown a high level of engagement, collaboration, and generosity with their time and expertise, creating a strong sense of community. Cross-group support and informal mentorship are thriving, with members naturally sharing knowledge. The deliverables are progressing steadily, and the flexible structure of the expert groups has been a key enabler, allowing for adjustments to meet the needs of varying capacities of the participants. That said, there are a few areas we might approach differently going forward. Improving clarity around group objectives, timelines, and expected outcomes would help ensure that all members are aligned and focus on shared goals. Providing more structured opportunities for cross-group sharing, sometimes that has something that has already happened informally, could allow for greater collaboration and the exchange of ideas. We could also ask experts directly about their preferred collaboration styles to help shape future interactions. As the service expanded, we invited representatives from newly joined institutions to participate in the expert groups, both to support their onboarding and to respond to their interest in engaging with ongoing work and shared resources. It may be helpful to establish more formal windows for joining these groups, ensuring new members are integrated in a way that maintains momentum while welcoming fresh perspectives. We now see that adopting a 2-year term for expert groups membership from the beginning would have been beneficial, providing alignment with the early adopter program and giving groups more time to explore their priorities and complete the deliverables. Looking ahead, we're planning to continue this model and even expand it in a few areas based on emerging needs. We're also approaching the stage where some of the longer-term deliverables will start come together. With that, I'll pass it back to Julia.
Thank you, Gabriella, and thank you for coordinating the groups and to all of the members of the expert groups who have made incredible contributions to the service in just one short year. So, coming back to the early adopter program, there's a lot to highlight as well, and a lot to be encouraged by at the midway point of the program. The uptake has exceeded our projections, and we've been very pleased with the feedback that we've received from participating institutions and the broader community. Since launching the program, we've completed an upgrade to DSpace 763 and contributed code back to the DSpace community. As mentioned earlier, we've responded to requests for more community-based discussions and added more avenues within the service to meet these needs. We've also started a separate working hour series to collaboratively work through best practices and needs to know for implementing the configurable entities feature in DSpace. These working hours are a joint collaboration with early adopters and the metadata and discovery expert group, and we'd like to explore more avenues to bring Scholaris institutions and expert groups together. We've also continued expanding documentation on our wiki to communicate what we've learned from numerous migrations at this point, and we've added a section on the wiki for early adopters to share their own materials with each other. So things like sample emails for communicating a move to Scholaris to stakeholders or project plans for managing local migration tasks. We'd love to see this area of the documentation grow more. In terms of what we do differently, we mentioned a couple of ways that we'd like to explore more intersection between the expert groups and the early adopters. We found that it might be helpful to provide more structured options and workflows for engaging these two sometimes overlapping and sometimes distinct areas of the Scholaris community infrastructure. This could include inviting expert group members to provide regular updates at Scholaris community calls or establishing clear channels for early adopters to solicit and receive advice on metadata or other repository topics from expert groups. At the same time, we're conscious of asking expert group members to potentially take on additional labor outside of their initial time commitment to the group. So establishing boundaries and expectations will need to happen before we can set up these channels. As we look further afield onto the horizon, we're focused on operationalizing the service based on the findings and recommendations that have come out from the expert groups and the early adopter program, as well as establishing a model for building consensus from participants around the service development. For example, determining the DSpace features and integrations that will be supported by Scholaris optionally or out of the box based on need and interest from participants. We're also looking at continuing to deepen our engagement with the DSpace community as well as the national and international repository communities. As we reflect on 1 year of dedicated service development through the early adopter program and the network of experts, we're really impressed by what has been achieved so far, and we're looking ahead to the future with excitement and optimism. None of this would be possible, however, without the active involvement of repository community members who continually impress us with their commitment and dedication, not only to building a community-driven national shared repository service that supports and showcases Canadian scholarship, but to time and time again extending their expertise and resources to their repository friends and neighbors. We would like to thank all those who embodied this spirit of collaboration and generosity and embarked on the Scholaris journey with us. If you have questions, we would love to hear from you. Please get in touch at any point via the contact information on the slide. Thank you so much for joining us today.